Hello, today we're going to do a tutorial on .html. .html is a JavaScript framework that allows you to build user interfaces using 100% client-side JavaScript, but it's a framework that wraps HTML to allow you to build the web pages. So let's get started here. I have a template page in my Visual Studio Code editor, and you can see that I've already imported the .html.js. Doesn't have any dependencies or anything like that. And we're going to build our website, but instead of typing HTML code, I'm going to do it all using .html. So I'm going to put a script element here. And the reason I put the script under body is because we want the body to be loaded when the script executes. That way we can append the body with our new elements that we're going to be creating using .html. And here's the syntax. So let's say that I wanted to have a hello world in an H1. I'm just going to do we need to select the target where we're going to draw the H1, and that's going to be body. This string right here is just a CSS selector, so this selects body. However, if I wanted to, I could add an ID here, and then I could just have a number sign. And that uses native JavaScript functions to accomplish that. There's no jQuery dependency or anything like that. And then we're going to add our H1 like this. Okay, now we'll save it and run it. And you can see there's our H1 with hello world in it. Great. Now I want to show you a few examples of several of the features in .html. And the way I'm going to do this is that in this tutorial, we're going to build a dynamic web page using .html, and the web page is going to be an interactive example framework that lists out a bunch of examples. We'll start off by creating a single example, and then I'm going to generalize that using widgets, and then we'll use the widget to create all of our following examples. So let's start by adding a few new elements to the page here. So I'm going to add an H2. This is going to be the name of the first example. So we'll name it example 1, and then we'll have a body of the example. That's going to be a div. Now here's what I had in mind. I just drew this up in Paint. It's a really rudimentary design here, but what I had in mind is we're going to have this outer div is going to be a box, and inside there's going to be two inner divs, right? So one here. Oh, sorry, I still have this. There's going to be two divs side by side, so we're going to have this div, and then we're going to have this div right beside it. And these inner divs, the first div is going to be the code, right? So there's going to be code, and then underneath the code, there's going to be an execute button. And when you click the execute button, it's going to run the code that's in here, which is going to be .html code, and it's going to render that code over here. So that's the idea. That's what we're going to be aiming to build. So let's do that. So here we have our div. Now, notice that with the other elements, I'm passing in strings here, and certainly I could pass in a string, and if I wanted to add divs here, I could just do this, right? But that would kind of defeat the purpose of having, a nice framework, I guess, because then you're just typing HTML. No, in fact, you can actually do this. You can pass in the dot object again, and okay, so important to note here, up here I use dot as if it were a function in order to target body, but I actually don't need a target here because I already know what the target is. The target is this div, so whatever's in here is going to be printed to this div, and I don't need to specify that anywhere. So I can just use this as an object. So this is a function, but it has the same prototype as like the H2, where this can be used to generate more elements. So I'll just show you. I'm just going to expand this out, and then we're going to do div. Okay, and that just creates two new divs, and the return of this function chain gets passed into this div function, and it gets added. So I can actually run this. Let's do a little test. Div1, oh sorry, and div2, just so that we can see what it looks like. There we have our two divs, and let's just make sure they're actually divs, right? You got your div1 and your div2. Okay, but I said I wanted the divs to be side by side, so that requires a little bit of CSS. And we're just going to add classes to each one of these three divs, and we'll do that in our CSS file. In fact, I've already done it, so I'll add the classes here. Oh, hang on. That's better. Let me explain what's going on here. Obviously, the way that we add elements is that we chain them together, but now I just chained in an attribute. This isn't an HTML element, it's an HTML attribute, which is a different thing. So how does this work? Well, behind the scenes, .html simply has a list of all the attributes and a list of all the elements, and so it knows whether you want to add an element or an attribute, and it handles those cases differently. In case you're wondering, there are a few cases of elements having the same name as attributes. I believe there are 5 cases in total, and they all have special handling in .html. For instance, if you want to add a form like this, right? Form can be an attribute or an element in HTML, but the form attribute only appears on certain elements. So we can tell from context that if I have form like this, that this is definitely going to be a form element and not a form attribute. But if you don't trust the context, you could always explicitly say that you want a form element by adding an E there or adding an A at the end of form. And each of the 5 overlapping elements support that. So that's an option for you, but for the most part, the context system works pretty well, and I've made sure that this isn't going to be a problem that most people ever have to deal with. Oh, and by the way, let's say that I wanted to add another attribute to the same element. I could do that. So I know that this element is going to be code, so let's turn it like green, like the matrix or something. So you can just stack up the attributes like this, and all of these attributes will all be attributed to the previous element. Okay, so we'll add a color. I don't know if we'll keep this, but we'll try it. There you go, green. Okay, so moving on, we're going to get rid of the text in here and fill it in with what should be in there. And of course, in the first div, we're going to have like a code box. In HTML, you use the pre tags, so .pre. And we'll just put our JavaScript into here. And then we're going to have a button underneath it. Oops. And then over here, this is going to start off as blank, but we're going to have to give it some type of ID or something. Okay, so that way we can write the generated markup into this div. I'll space this out a little so it looks nice. And we're going to repeat our h1 example. So .h1, and we'll put small quotes in here. Hello world. Now getting to this button, in HTML, if you want to add an onClick event, you use the onClick attribute. So we're just going to use the onClick attribute. And you know, there is a special handling for this particular attribute. In fact, any attribute in .html, if you just pass a function in here, like so, right? Now when this code executes, .html will give this inner anonymous function an arbitrary name, and when this onClick event executes, it will call the inner function, and in fact it will pass in an event parameter. Before we continue, let's just take a second to let this sink in, and we're going to test this out. We'll have an alert function. So when you click the button, it's just going to call this alert. That's all it does. And let's just see how this works. We'll inspect. Well, let's test it first. So it works. What's happening behind the scenes here? Here's our element. And notice that .html has added an arbitrary name for this element. It's an indexed array of functions. So every time I add a new event attribute to my page, this integer is incremented, and each attribute function will be replaced with an anonymous name. Excellent, let's get back. We'll erase this alert. And then we're going to use dot to target the example one and render the above code. Now, wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to repeat our code from here to here? I'm going to get to that, and when I show you, it's really going to show the power of using .html for building dynamic web pages. For now, we're just going to have it as a fixed code in place until we get to the widgets element of this tutorial. So I think this will work. Let's test it out. You click run, and there's your hello world as an H1. And you can actually click it a couple times. You can click it as many times as you want, and it will it'll keep appending the parent div. If you don't want it to append and you want the div to get cleared out, the target div to be cleared out, you can just use the empty keyword. Empty. There's no element named empty, but empty will clear out the element, the target element, before appending to it. Let's try that out now. There you go. So that's the core of .html. This is the basics, and I think this is a pretty good place to stop with part one of this tutorial. I hope at this point your imagination is just swarming with ideas with how this can be used to build powerful dynamic pages. So far, we've only scratched the surface when it comes to building DHTML pages using .html. In the next tutorial, I'm going to show you how to build widgets, timed elements, iterative elements, conditional elements, and I'll also show you some other useful built-in features and tricks that .html has up its sleeve.